Hey everybody, welcome to episode 56 of Tactical Crouch. Of course, your favorite competitive Overwatch podcast. Otherwise, why would you be here? Why would you be here? Joined, of course, by Yiska and Volamel. We've got a guest. We've got a guest this week. Crushed it last week at the Gauntlet. You could say the real winner of the Gauntlet were the casters. And at the forefront of that, Kevin AVRL, looking great, man, by the way. Love the Henley going on. Just, you know, I can tell you've put a lot of time and effort into decorating the room you're in.
Just moving the mess around, you know, it's a constant work in progress, and the least amount of mess I can show, the better. So,
fair enough.
we're making improvements here.
Fair enough. Yeah, we had to make Joe start making his bed on the show. So,
yeah,
Joe,
that's true.
Have some class, man.
He had to pull me off to the side and was like, "Look, man, you know, this is incredibly unprofessional. You know, Yiska at least can shut his window. You know, the least you could do is at least, you know, make the bed. So, you know, get on it. You know, do better. Better.
And one day I'll have a better camera as well. So we're getting there. Just slow progress, but we are moving in the right direction.
Christmas is coming.
The funny thing is that when we started the show, the tree behind Yiska was a full bloom cherry blossom, and
that's not even a tree. That's a
what?
A lamp.
You have a funky lamp, okay?
Bullshit. No, it isn't.
That's a lamp.
Turn it on. No way, that's a lamp.
All right,
wait.
There's no way.
I knew I should have kept my pants on. Let's show.
Crawl there.
For the audio listeners, he's getting up at the moment to go fiddle with his lamp tree.
Well, that's a sizable thing.
He's holding up some sort of base, and it's an upside down lamp.
What?
Why is it like the floor?
So
I thought Germans were supposed to be good at engineering. What's wrong with your floor lamp?
So what bet did you lose to have that piece of furniture in your home?
Stove. What do you mean?
It serves no functional purpose. What are you trying to do? Look under your bed? What is that? What is that supposed to light up?
It just lights the room, dude. What do you mean functional purpose? That's the guy, of course, that comes from you, who shares has absolutely nothing in his room and buys one piece of cloth for his shirt as well as his bed drapes.
He's got the one functional thing in his room right behind him.
Exactly.
The only
That's not even a power socket. That's Play-Doh that went there when he was 3.
The only supplementary furniture Joe has in his bedroom is the thing that prevents the doorknob from going through the wall. And I appreciate that. Oh, man. Yes, we will permit the term butt plug in chat. We're not. Welcome to, if you're listening to us not live, you're missing so much in chat, by the way.
This is what the people want when they start the show. We'll get into it. Don't worry, but let's have a little bit of fun, you know?
Yeah.
We're here.
We are going to have fun.
It's episode 56.
AVRL, thanks for being here. Kind of early for you. I know you already got your steak and cheese breakfast sandwich out of the way.
Yep, we got that. Good. It's it's not super early or anything. We somehow made it work, and happy to be here, man. Thanks for finally having me on. I'm super happy to be on the show.
Yeah, it's a perfect week too, right? Because we just got Gauntlet. We just got a bunch of news about Contenders. So it's a great week to have you on. Super excited to do so. Before we do though, housekeeping really quick. First, follow the show on Twitter, tactical_crouch. We post things there sometimes. Show supported 100% by our patrons and our subs. So sub on Twitch, go to patreon.com/tacticalcrouch, support the show, and you will be rewarded in the next life. Guaranteed.
Are we starting a cult?
We are.
And someone really wanted me to be rewarded in the next life.
Tactical cult is what we're calling it.
Yeah, somebody saved AVRL before the show started.
Oh, this guy needs saving, dude. This guy doesn't have any plans for the afterlife. I'm gonna help him out with that.
Oh, why hasn't anybody got on this train? This is incredible. Gamer cults. Well done, John.
I know. What we've been talking about all week in Discord is ways that we can monetize things for gamers.
Gamer religion.
Gamer religion.
Gamer faith.
All right.
The way some people treat games, I mean, it's
it's like
true.
Churches wish they had that level of dedication.
I didn't quite think Joe's idea had legs, where he wanted to start the religion where your soul, once you pass, becomes a Reddit.
Is this just like weird karma because I shit on your lamp? Like I don't like. What is your issue today?
Yes.
I go from lamp and you go to like lambasting my views on the faith and like religious sentiments. Like
we aren't going here. But to be fair, if there's anything that could be a religious symbol in any of our homes, it's that monstrosity of a floor lamp that Yiska has.
Yeah,
I'd worship it.
Praise the floor lamp.
It'd be like we would call it the
lamp god,
the evanescent root, or yeah.
Dude, you bring that thing far enough back in history that's a thing to be worshipped right there.
It's true. Wow. Well, hopefully we haven't we've been treading the line. Hopefully we hadn't alienated too many people before we actually get to talk about stuff. But thanks for being here.
Wrong.
I don't think
we've said anything wrong.
I don't think we did. But
just whatever
works for you.
You know, just for the audio listeners, the lamp is actually very beautiful, and these guys are all bullshit.
Listen.
Great taste.
I want to go on record that I've never dissed your lamp.
I respect Yiska for many, many things. His interior decorating, not one of those things. I will say so. Sorry. But I do not approve of the lamp.
The thing is, like, there's nothing to criticize in your room because you just went to IKEA and went like streamer background, and Joe just doesn't have one. So amazing.
So,
there's no attack.
There's nothing in my room from IKEA. Just so
so let the record show.
Let the record show that this
them and their
room
meatballs can shove it.
IKEA list.
But you've got a lot of RGB though. You know, let's be real.
I do.
You know,
brings out the color in my eyes.
And we checked that it was a real room as well because I saw him walk out the door. Otherwise, I'm like, dude, you got a nice like green screen thing going on behind you, dudes. Good.
You've got us all fooled, John. You didn't get a new lens. It was just a new green screen.
I'm just like in the middle of like a dump in San Jose. That's how we get the good lighting.
See, he wasn't lying about the no IKEA thing because if you just have a green screen behind you, that's no IKEA right there.
No, it's true.
It's true. Unless they
Straight
sell
up
green rugs.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very textured background you got going on. It's a green rug, right?
Elgato makes a green screen mouse pad now.
But why? For like hand cams?
Some people hand cam it, and you can just hand cam it over.
That's so weird.
It's like
over
not like
these people.
Yeah, you can now hand cam it over your own gameplay footage. Look at that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's some Inception level stuff.
All right.
Yeah.
We need to talk about some Overwatch here.
But do we have to though?
We're reeling it in.
We do.
We're reeling it in, talking about lots with contenders. Let's just talk about the new Overwatch contenders rules for 2020 because this was kind of a big drop. We're going to talk about Gauntlet a little bit later, but I think it makes more sense to discuss what to expect from 2020 and then come back and speak about Gauntlet now that we have a framing for what to expect next season. Otherwise, we have to go back and talk about Gauntlet again and how it matters or doesn't matter. So, Overwatch Contenders rules for 2020 were posted about 5 days ago, so we're a little bit behind on this one, but we'll give you the highlights right here. First things first, Contenders has been split into two conferences, the Atlantic and Pacific Conference. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Pacific includes Australia, China, Korea, and Pacific. And Atlantic includes Europe, NA, and South America. It'll also be moving to a bi-weekly tournament series, same with trials. So it's kind of interesting, but there's like there's very little overlap between Open Division, trials, and contenders. It's almost like this ongoing thing. There is one time where I think Open Division and Contenders overlap.
Yeah.
But besides that, there's very little overlap there, which I do kind of appreciate because it's already going on during the Overwatch League Season 3 season, right?
Mm-hmm.
As if that isn't hard enough to like get people to tune into Contenders. So there's that. I've got this nice handy little link here I'll post in chat that kind of explains the schedule a little bit more fully while we talk about this next up. There's 6 phases. Can you believe it? 6 phases. I don't know, it feels like really complicated.
Yeah. So it's needlessly complicated, but yeah, you can simplify it down to pretty simple terms.
So phase 1 is going to be 7 weeks of Open Division. 6 weeks of round robin tournament play, I believe, and then 1 week of playoffs.
Swiss, actually.
Thank you.
Which is interesting.
Thank you for that correction.
Open Div's always been Swiss, isn't it?
I think.
To be honest, I have no clue.
No, it has. It goes from Swiss into a bracket.
Okay.
It used to be 10 rounds of Swiss, if I'm not mistaken, which I don't know if it'll still be 10 full rounds. Pretty sure you played 2 rounds a week, though, so it's only like 5 weeks. This is just going off memory. Someone that actually plays Open Div is probably like, dude, you're wrong. But based off memory, it's like 10 rounds, 5 weeks. But this is
I know it's
7,
6 weeks now, and then 1 week of playoffs.
Interesting.
So for those who aren't familiar, because we do have some people who are like newer to competitive scenes and stuff like that, a Swiss tournament is essentially where you, Joe, how would you explain it? I'm gonna butcher
Swiss.
it.
I had to look it up as well. Swiss, I believe everybody plays in the first round, and then the people who succeed in round 1 continue to face off against people who also have succeeded or have similar records, right? So somebody who is 1-1 will face off against somebody else who is 1-1. Somebody's 0-2 will face off against somebody who is 0-2, right? And you continue down the bracket until you finish with your 6 weeks, and then at the very end, you have your completed regular season.
Yep.
If that makes sense. Hopefully I did it justice, but if not, then look it up. Google is your friend.
Bingo. So yes, you have 7 weeks of Open Division, and then the top 8 will compete in trials. Now, there's something that we should probably talk about, and that's the transition between this year to the first Contenders season of 2020. And that is you're going to see 2019 Contenders Season 2 teams invited to a preliminary double elimination tournament. The top 4 are going to be seeded into their region's contenders and receive buys. The bottom 4 will receive buys in their region's first trials tournaments to seed 1 through 4. So that's how they kind of set up the bracket for the first time. Then we go to phase 1 of Open Division. Then phase 2 is going to be the top 4 of Contenders Trials, which we just discussed are the bottom 4 Contenders seeds from this double elimination tournament, go against the top 8 from Open Division in a single elimination bracket. So far, so good. Phase 3, top 8 teams from Trials plus top 4 Contenders teams compete in a... My Siri just activated in the other room. How the... The top 8 teams from Trials and the top 4 Contenders teams from the double elimination tournament that we just discussed will compete in bi-weekly tournaments alternating between Atlantic and Pacific. The top 4 retain their spots in Contenders. The bottom 8 return to Trials. Phase 4 repeats Phase 2 and 3. Phase 5 is we do it all over again.
Yep.
Can I quickly mention for actually moving past Trials? This is actually really interesting because there's 12 teams in Trials. 8 of them move forward, right? So the top 4 versus top 8 Trials teams. Yeah, so top 8 Contenders Trials teams. That's 8 out of 12. That's a good chance. So if you actually look at the bracket for the Trials, if you win 1 match, you're in the top 8. So literally, you just got to win once, and then you've made Contenders.
You've made Contenders, like the tournament.
It really is kind of that easy. I mean, it is single elim, so maybe RNG just kind of screws you if you get a bad matchup. But really, yeah, you win 1 game, like 1 match, and you've made Contenders. That's insane.
Yep. Should Overwatch League teams be worried about their academies being relegated?
Yeah.
I think it depends on the investment put in, but yeah, generally, I think this softens the blow, whereas normally just normal relegation kind of like puts you out of commission for a long time. You still can kind of get your seed back, with whatever you need to change or this, that, the other thing. I still think it's cause for concern for academy teams, but I think this is a lot safer for them than other tournament series where, you go back to like the LCS and you have NRG getting a ton of investment money and then immediately being relegated. That's not good for anybody. This way you still can have a path back into the tournament, and still be successful in that sense. So
well, let me tell you about one concern real quick, and this is the thing that I think most people have not necessarily skimmed over, but it's like, I don't know, this hasn't been talked about as much as it probably should have, but NA's been cut back from 2 regions to 1, or like,
right.
2 separate things to 1. There's no like NA East West anymore. It's just North America now, right? So that's just a lot less positions and spots in contenders overall for probably the place where most of the academy teams are. So in terms of there being just a lot of academy teams, almost you'd imagine someone's going to get relegated for sure. There's just not enough spots.
They have to, right?
Yeah, I can't remember, like, part of me wants to say I thought that there was something where like they couldn't be relegated below trials, but I could totally be wrong about that.
That's like this year.
Yeah, that was. I think that was the end of this year.
End of this year.
They were grandfathered. Yeah, I think they were. This was the season that they were like grandfathered in. Like you weren't going to get relegated. Like you had a spot. Now with the new system, it's completely open. If you drop, you drop. But there again, you're still fostering talent, and I think that's the idea. At least that should be the core idea with a lot of these academy teams. It doesn't necessarily always hit the mark. So you still get to build, and iterate on, lower tier players, maybe younger players, build them up, and setbacks and tournaments. And that's a lot of, I think a lot of this is good. I would like to see things changed in the future, but so far
it's a really interesting idea. You see a lot more opportunities for like open division to really show their worth and
show that they can indeed run teams.
And
I also think, sorry.
The only other thing I was going to say is I think that early on you might see an academy team or a contenders team drop down. But I think that after the first 2 seasons, I bet you they pretty much have that down on lock, and it would be very rare and very surprising for a team to actually lose their contenders and trial spots and fall into open division.
I think it will continuously keep that way. If what they said about patch cycles is going to become true, that every 6 to 8 weeks we're going to have a patch introduced also in Overwatch League. Now, of course, the severity of that patch very much, depends if meta switches, and if actually meta switch this quickly, then that certainly will also have impact on contenders. But I think even without that, I think it will, like the academy structure will have to adapt in terms of contract length, in terms of general, like maybe even security for coaches. I think coaches will be way more under the gun with these changes, as we saw already with Paris Academy in a sense, right? Then I honestly think it's going to be much more fluid, and I think it will actually increase the question marks of Overwatch League teams, why they even have academy teams in the first place. If there's so much volatility and seemingly less opportunity to afford building up. Because, for instance, let's take Gladiators Legion, for instance, right? Didn't go to the Gauntlet, to Atlantic Showdown, so they had nothing to do with getting that slot for themselves for the NA region. They then, I think, overall, they had either 4-5 or 5-5 records in order to go to Gauntlet in terms of overall matches. They were definitely negative during the regular season, and then during the playoffs, they came back and made it to Gauntlet, right? Stuff like this, just like coming back from this, it will be much less frequent. I think I don't see ownerships or like even Overwatch League teams with a hands-on GM tolerating that kind of failure for that long. And even though there is a happy end, as demonstrated by Gladiators Legion, right? And
well, I think there still can be those turnarounds, but it's going to be framed differently, right? Like you might have a Contenders tournament. I still struggle to kind of call it a season now because it's really not. It's just like a tournament. So like you'll have one Contenders tournament where maybe an academy team does really poorly and they do get relegated to trials, but then they come back and win the next two, right? Like you still have those stories to kind of like hope for and wish for. And again, that can be framed for open division teams and lower tier teams as well. Like they don't disappear, but they're just framed slightly differently.
I think I look at this.
Sorry, keep
I think I look at this in terms of academy. Like, this is definitely more of like a farm kind of thing now because if you're an academy team or if you're tied to a Overwatch League team, you kind of want to play in a season, right? You got to think about like what they really want to get out of it. If you want to try and make it a thing where, okay, we want a lot of exposure, we want to, I don't know, have our tier 2 almost operate in its own realm and have its own, be able to operate by itself and make its own money and whatnot, then you kind of want the longer format where you have the safety of a full season. You're gonna be there for a long time, even if you suck. Whereas this kind of thing where you play, you might get relegated, and then you might not even get back the next trials. It might take you a couple tries, right, depending on where your team is at. So there's a level where it's almost less attractive for academies unless your goal is just to farm. If you're just looking to develop talent, that's probably not bad. But otherwise, if you're like, trying to get a lot of eyes on your academy team, this is like definitely not going to help with that. This kind of format.
Interesting. There are a couple of things to note here. So the top 8 teams do compete in a double elimination regional playoff tournament at the end of each contender season. And then there's no details on showdowns or gauntlet, but they will return. So we will have those back in some form. We just don't know exactly what. We also don't have any information on prizing. So we're not skimming over those things. It's just that's exactly what was said in the article. But yeah, an interesting change, something that I think will, I want to say it'll make the scene a little bit easier to follow. Because you have the storylines, right, of relegation. So it's very easy to immediately go, this team was in Contenders last season, now they're fighting for their spots again this season in trials. Or this team started as an open division and now they're in the top 4 in trials and they could end up in Contenders. Like you can kind of see that vertical movement for people who I would say are the more casual listeners, if that makes sense.
I mean, it's definitely, if you're joining in halfway through the season now, being this entire duration of 4 contenders, single elims into like a playoff, into like whatever the showdown is, you can join in for one of those, I assume, weekends where, hey, here's your contenders tournament for the week or whatever. You can just join in for that and then you're good. But also, in some ways, I mean, like, honestly, the seasonal format was not difficult to follow anyway. And if you want to be a fan of Contenders, that was almost like a pretty good way to follow, because you could just sort of track the progression of your favorite team throughout a whole season. Kind of like, it's kind of like following Overwatch League in a way. Whereas this is more like probably following a circuit format where you follow your team across different tournaments, or in this case, it's the same tournament multiple times. So I guess it's a different kind of viewing experience and one that's a bit more bite-sized.
And I think that's what people need to start to get into Contenders, is something that they can kind of attach themselves to, and it's already exciting. It kind of almost feels like March Madness, where it's just like, all right, well, it's that season. We've got Contenders tournaments this weekend. Somebody's going to get relegated. Somebody's getting promoted. Somebody stays. This is pretty cool. And with that, you already get people kind of like interested, like, oh, there's stuff on the line. There's already drama. The format brings some sort of drama. And I think that's something that people have been missing due to how kind of like long and drawn out this seasonal format is, where it's just like,
I'll tell you, like, I can tell you that the fact that it gives more opportunity for open division trials, like literally twice the amount of opportunities for open div, is actually a pretty big deal. Because I know those guys have very little to do when their season isn't on. Like when you're not trying to qualify for contenders and you're tier 3, like what are you playing? So that's a big problem.
Yeah,
they're playing Project A. That's what they're playing.
Oh, okay. That's
Project A. I'm not sure I've heard of that. Is that like a card game or something?
Is that the?
It's the mobile
BlizzCon
port,
League?
right? Yeah, that's the one. That's
idiots.
the one.
John, I thought we were saving that for later.
It's not in the notes. It's not in the notes. It's just
That's true.
saying it came up right now, so we might as well just bring it up now. So this past week, Riot celebrated 10 years of Riot and League of Legends, right? Because like that's
League of Legends. Yeah.
So and they made some pretty big announcements. They announced a new card game. They announced that League of Legends is coming to mobile and console. But one of the big ones was they announced one of their own competitive arena shooter type
tactical character shooter, I think they call it.
Yeah.
They announced their own Overwatch. It basically is their take on it.
Yeah.
I would say they announced their own Counter-Strike. Probably be closer to the mark with like abilities and stuff, but like I don't know about arena shooter because when I think arena shooter, I'm thinking closer to like Quake and stuff, or even Team Fortress. Whereas this definitely feels and looks like a Counter-Strike type. Yeah. Like it's definitely not a realism shooter. We're not getting like a Battlefield type of thing, but
nope.
We also saw very early on concepts because like I would have said the same thing about the first gameplay trailers of Overwatch, where it's like you literally set them up with like these 5 different cubes and like. What Reaper just ran around and like shot people from a million miles away. He actually had like dual pistols at the time, like in the game, like little machine guns in the game in the alpha.
Are you not thinking about Tracer? I don't think Reaper had. I think Reaper had like the grenade launcher at one point because of the cinematic, but I don't know about the other stuff.
He would shoot guns.
I don't know.
I think they talked about how they've first had weapons as unlockables for every character in the pre-open beta or pre-closed beta even, like much before that, like had the idea of just like unlocking it, much like for instance in Call of Duty you would unlock a weapon, and then they decided against that experience. I don't know the reason that they stated, but of course it makes a little bit more sense, I guess, for an esports game. So just to have that standardized, because otherwise you gotta clearly outline which weapons are allowed and whatnot, which aren't.
You can have like esports accounts, like tournament clients that just have that stuff open. You know what I mean? Like just like how they would have done it in like World of Warcraft, where you just have like all of your gear available. Like it makes it a little weird, but like you can work around it. Just like how like FGC, like they just have like there are games with like unlockable characters, but they have ways to like move past that and just have the characters be unlocked for each like setup.
Sure, like that's more of giving options to play. So the thing is, like when you limit, for instance, in Team Fortress, right? Like the Team Fortress esports experience was nothing like the public server experience.
100%.
In terms of items and whatnot. So you don't want to separate the player base, and that we had that discussion on many occasions in terms of just pulling player bases apart based on patches and whatnot. So if you don't want to do that, I suppose it was a good fine change in that regard. Don't know about incentives. Maybe grinding for certain weapons would have, because like what's there really an incentive that binds you to your account other than skins at the moment?
So I think that's a big gripe overall with Overwatch, is that it's kind of flat. Like there's really not much reason for me to get on it and play unless like I'm just like itching.
Their loot system is too fair.
It's too fair.
It's too fair. Like tell me it's not. Tell me you wouldn't want to play more or do it if you couldn't grind out certain skins in a competitive season, or grind out like, and they do their holiday stuff, right? So they
Sure.
do their events,
and that drives people.
And that
to
drives
play,
people there.
100%.
Imagine if they had
but not competitive.
Yeah,
And that's the thing, is because I
competitive.
actually agree with you on this part, John, because I think you need to have a little bit more incentive in the competitive side. Like Golden Guns is one thing, and I know Blizzard probably like, oh yeah, we probably shouldn't have done that, but I don't know, like, why not like skins? Why not seasonal skins? I think
you
people
get an
would not be down
animated
for that.
spray, right? That's all you get.
Yeah.
That's all you get for being top 500.
Well, I think they could give you like an evolving kind of thing. I don't know. I'm just spitballing here, but like,
Yeah.
Well, I totally agree
skin,
with you. We don't
imagine there's a
disagree.
skin like imagine this skin. It's just like, you know, maybe you get a skin for being silver plus, but if you're gold plus, it looks slightly better when it has an extra thing. Or the higher rank you are, the better looking it is, or whatever. So you can show that off. Something that makes people wanna grind a bit harder, or have more of a reason to play, and hopefully makes people try a bit harder in ranked as well, because that's another problem, right? People need motivation to actually give a damn about winning.
I'm not a skins guy, but I've always found it interesting in like League of Legends, where like you load into the game and people have their little borders and their little like accommodations for either being like a good teammate, this, that, the other thing. People actually give a crap about these little borders, like, yeah, an evolving skin for a character that you play in 222, where you're kind of limited to what characters you can play now. Like, yeah, I think that would be something that they should seriously look at, because it gives you a progression system. It gives you something that players are very obviously interested in. Skins and cosmetics are kind of a lot of the big reasons why people get on.
Riot do it every year. Their seasons last forever, but like, you get, if you're gold plus, I don't know if it's still like this, if you're gold plus, you get like a champ, you get like a victory skin or something like that. You get something special. And I remember how annoyed I was that I missed out once, because I was like, and I couldn't quite make goals. Like, damn, I didn't get the skin. I really wanted the skin.
At least you get to a certain point, which forces you to play the game.
It's also not foreign to Blizzard to do these type of things. In World of Warcraft, you had that all the time, right? Clearing raid encounters, getting a mount drop there.
The gladiator skins
mount
for PvP is amazing.
They're great.
Dude, Hearthstone has like monthly card backs for each
Yeah.
season.
Yeah.
Now, to be fair, you get those monthly card backs by getting to level 20, and you can't lose stars.
True. Yeah.
So the argument, this is coming from Hearthstone was my game at one point. The argument was more, even like, imagine a weekly card back or a monthly card back, because it resets every month with the season.
Right.
But the first one is a tier 1 card at 20, and then you get a tier 2 version of that card back, and you just kind of like level up that card back based on where you finish.
Sure.
An evolving cosmetic. There you go.
Yeah.
You and I do remember Jeff Kaplan originally saying, when they kind of came out with the competitive seasons, and they talked about the rewards being this animated spray, and the philosophy was much like a lot of Overwatch's original philosophies, in the right place, in practice, I think horrible. But this one was, we want people playing competitive who want to be in the competitive mode because they want to be competitive, and incentivizing people to play a mode they don't want to play means that you get throwers, but in actuality, you get throwers anyway, right?
Yeah.
Like that's just,
it sounded very commendable, but then
it's like,
nobody
we
plays the
don't
game.
want to pull people to play a mode that they don't want to play, just because they have this carrot being dangled in front of them. The issue is just people go to competitive anyway. There's no real reason to or not to.
I mean, and they say that, but then they also have like the golden guns, which are very cool. A lot of people like them, and the only way to get them is to play competitive. So it's like, you're trying to have your cake and eat it too. You might as well just like double down and just really give the community something to work for, to work towards. And if you progress through it, then you get a reward, and that requires you to actually do well and win.
And I think people do need a carrot, because this is pure speculation on my part, but there's a lot of quick play players only. It's like, on some level, like, why do you ever need to touch competitive? If you're just like a normal gamer, you just want to play some Overwatch, like, really, quick play offers you the same game in various ways compared to competitive, where you can get faster games, quicker queues, right? It's less stressful for a lot of people. And why would you jump into competitive if it's what does it really offer you over quick play for a large portion of the player base, other than hey,
aggravation?
I got a rank. But if you don't, but the thing is, like, having that rank comes with so many problems. It's like, why not just do quick play? So yeah, I think there needs to be some more carrots on a stick for sure to get people to care more about playing competitive, and I don't know, be a start.
And this is where I actually do side with like the other games argument, where if the field of games also incentivize you to play other modes and allow a carrot to exist, and then in Overwatch there is no carrot, why do I bother? It is fun. I do enjoy playing it, but like I enjoy playing this other game a lot more because I'm incentivized to play it over there, and I'm incentivized to play Fortnite.
It's also just fresh. Like, as stupid as it is, having a new
as silly as it sounds, people like that stuff. Yeah,
skin every 3 days in Fortnite is really cool.
Yeah, it's
really fun. I've collected most of the vanilla skins in Overwatch just through playing it, and yes, I've bought a dangerous amount of loot boxes as well, but I haven't bought loot boxes in over a year, which I think is a problem that's not just for me. I don't think I'm the only person who's like, you know what, I would rather spend this in Apex or Fortnite or WoW or whatever else. I don't think I'm alone in that. And I think part of it is I think they made it, it sucks to say, but they made it too fair and too reasonable.
Well, I mean, I think if you undid that right now, people would be really upset. But also at the same time, like, I think you can make it fair, but also have things like, for example, if they're this range of skins is very fair, but there's also this other range which is a little bit more unfair. I think because everything just comes out of the same system, like there's like a one loot box for all kind of deal going on. We're not talking about golden guns here, we're just talking about skins only. Basically, if you want skins, a loot box will do, whereas if you had, I don't know, not to say a competitive loot box, but like we were talking about earlier, like different
like
cosmetics, different rewards.
Give me some seasonable, give me some seasonal
rewards that are not in the rewards that are not in the main pool that you get in your standard loot box, right? Like that's harder to get for whatever reason. You have to go through whatever to get that. Maybe it's a seasonal thing, maybe it's a competitive only thing, but it's not just in the normal loot box pool that you can just get.
I'm going to have to title this podcast, Give Us More Loot Boxes, Blizzard, and just have to see the people riot in competitive Overwatch in the subreddit, because that's exactly what I'm going to call it.
I actually think that I hated how hard the Diablo 3 item shop failed, because that seemed to have always like kept Blizzard on the super safe side of all kinds of itemizations and trading and whatnot, where the economics still exists in Valve games, for instance, right? Sure. Like there's still trading going on, and there are much higher perceived values to certain items, and like. But let's be honest, when I see a 6 skin in ranked, that's like day one of the skin coming out. Other than that, I won't be that impressed. Yeah. Like, for instance, I once had it, I think a month later, that people said, oh, the Lucio skin that you get through the Overwatch League thing, that was sick, and they didn't know that existed. But other than that, it's like, it really isn't anything out of the ordinary, and I think rarity would do a lot in that. Definitely. But like, let's tie it back together, because I think 2 weeks from now, we will know more where the direction of the game is going. Maybe these approaches will be seen very differently. That it's not an insinuation of a leak or anything. It's just like,
no, I mean, there's going to be news.
It's got to be something.
It's going to be probably pretty impactful for the entire ecosystem of Overwatch. Like the rumors of it, for instance, like, don't sweep me off my feet, mainly because like if it is only in a casual part of the game, in terms of like a PvE type of thing, we've already proven in Overwatch that we're very bad at picking up those casual fans for the esports side. So we'll have to find ways to reintegrate people that way. But then again, like when we came to this from Project A, and we haven't seen anything from that game. No. And we also don't know what the vision of Overwatch will be going forward in a post-BlizzCon world, where it's much fairer and
probably also from a time scale point of view, much fairer to compare these two games once we know about Project A and once we know more about what
The
Overwatch
future of
has in
Overwatch,
store.
Well, I mean, let's look at the sort of environment that we're working towards now, because we're gonna get more news on what this Project A, this thing is in 2020, right? That's what they said in the video and all that. But also, its place in the market is going to be very important, because you're about to have another major player in the shooter market. I know, like, yeah, sure, PUBG and Fortnite have been there now, but we're talking about a team-based PvP kind of shooter, and that's something that no one's really competed against Overwatch in that field since Overwatch
have
really.
Tried, and it's been pretty bad. Yeah,
Exactly. Whereas this is like the one company in the world that could probably put something out, and people have quite a lot of faith in, is probably going to be Riot, just because of their track record with League of Legends esports. And the fact that, I don't know if you guys saw this, but like some of the developers on this game, like, this is pretty serious. They got Volcano on there, which is he's like a former NA 1.6 pro from CS. This guy knows what he's doing. This guy made Dcash, so this guy is the real deal. He's on the project. He's a senior dev. There's another guy who's sort of account is called Nicolo, and he says, to be clear, Project A shooting matters. You don't kill with abilities. Abilities create tactical opportunities to take the right shot. Characters have abilities that augment their gameplay instead of fighting directly with their abilities. So yeah, there's just a lot of things pointing towards this being, a shooting game first. And if you look at it from a Counter-Strike perspective, the abilities are more like utilities, right? You're doing I saw a bunch of things in the trailer and the teasers that look like just different colors of smoke grenades, so I'm not surprised if that's really what some of the abilities at the end of the day are. And before this game comes out, which in my opinion probably is about a full year away, we might not see this game until October next year, right? Overwatch and Blizzard have a bit of time to get themselves sorted before then.
100%. I'm not on board with the whole, it's going to kill Overwatch. Like, you just got to give it time. It has to. Blizzard has to have some sort of leniency to make, adequate changes. And, again, with what Yiska said, and to tie it all together, if there is a depth problem to Overwatch, that could be solved within the next year, right? Like, we getting people in the door is just as important as filtering them up, right? If we can't get people inside the establishment, we can't get them to be returning customers, right? So if we can get more of a casual player base back at the baseline, we'll have more to filter up with whatever system they develop. So I think it starts at the bottom.
And I would say the best thing that they've done to get players back, or to get casual players in, has not been balance changes or any other. It's been the merch. It's been the shorts. It's been the world around Overwatch. The Rule 34 that I know Yiska frequents often. Overwatch stuff. I know.
r/Overwatch.
Yep. So it's sorry, Yiska, to throw you under the bus there. So yeah, I think that there is probably. I don't know, I lost my train of thought after seeing his reaction.
There's a lot of things to bring people.
Feels like I just shot his dog or something.
By the way, I mean, you look at League, how the fact that they got an animated series coming out, like, every game developers know now, it's not just about the game. You got to build this whole universe around the game where, hey, when's the movie coming out? Where are your comic books? Where are your your figurines and all that? You got to have everything now. And actually, to be fair, Overwatch is somewhat ahead of the game in some of that, because they already have a bunch of cool merch, and they have the figurines, and they have the very expensive statues, and they have a lot of stuff surrounding it. I wouldn't be surprised if there was some more serious kind of content coming out, like, I don't know, a series or a movie or whatever. That's probably
that
talked about
Netflix
forever.
Overwatch series, man. Just give me that Pixar animated 10 episodes in a season.
And look, you joke, but like, the R34 stuff is probably an unintentional, or let's say an unintentional, like, sort of thing that kind of, I don't know. There's that all feeds into it, even if it's not officially part of anything. Even though, like, it's no one really talks about that, but it doesn't hurt, does it? I mean, it draws attention.
No. It's a weird underbelly, but it doesn't hurt anything.
Didn't the Paladins CEO say something about he's not worried about the game's success because people were making R34 stuff about it, or like he wanted more people to make R34 stuff about it. I can't remember what it was. Whereas Blizzard is like
Anything
actively
shows you the
trying to ban
popularity
it.
of the game.
It's true, man. I mean, it's
This'll,
true.
You know, whatever floats your boat. You know, you do you.
I will say, did you guys watch that trailer and just a commentary of the executive producer? No, I'm not going to. Don't look like that. I want to get away from this topic. I'm not going to address it. You guys are weird. I'm trying to get this train going again.
Thank you for that.
Yeah,
Really appreciate
the 2 minute video, right? It was like 2.5 minutes.
Executive.
And she
should have said this for the post.
She like hits all the buttons to get like the influencer base, I think.
What do you mean?
So we're talking about netcode. That's an issue in FPS generally. Definitely Pika's advantage, big topic in CSGO, especially online, especially with the tick servers. Tick servers, by the way, also dedicated servers, all kinds of things, not in Call of Duty. High tick rates, like we don't have high tick rates MM in CSGO, for instance. That has been a thing. Then they talk about anti-cheat. That like that's the thing that's currently constantly. I think I saw what's his name, Widowmaker main, Kefri talk about just like meeting so many hackers in ranked now. What else did they talk about? But basically pushing all the buttons to also really attract. Oh yeah, of course. And then the FPS mechanics first and foremost thing. Like that's basically just going to the disgruntled FPS crowd that Overwatch and as well as CS and definitely also PUBG have, and just saying, you know what, like look at this sugar. Like this, like we've
checked all the boxes. Like you can come over here, be excited.
Yeah.
Well, you know exactly what kind of game they're trying to market, right? That they're trying to make just based off the fact that they put that out first.
Yeah.
Also, like by having it in an abstract universe like they do, they are completely avoiding the discussion that the CS scene is currently having about this counter-terrorist thing. Not real guns. It's rather abstract. Not as big of a problem to understand, but still the intuitive nature, sort of. I mean, you lose a little bit, of course, but still keep most of it around. I think in general, like they're just addressing, at least with the trailer, a lot of the recent issues with FPS and are almost directly addressing influences with that. Because let's be honest, nobody comes out and says, one of our core philosophies is to have solid anti-cheat. That's not how you design a game. That's a side project that can have high priority. It's a feature still. It's not core principles. To have that in a launch discussion is just like picking up these disgruntled audiences and just trying to attract them towards, and honestly, it works pretty well.
To be fair, though,
definitely caught my attention.
So definitely caught my attention too. But if they don't deliver on that day one,
yes,
they also dig themselves a pretty big hole.
Which Blizzard has.
They have to be prepared right now to say that is something that they can do in order to say it in the way that they say it.
Well, they can say it as in like, okay, this is a promise that we will fulfill, and then like if it doesn't happen day one, they'll say, hey, this is going to come with time, but this is something we were going to definitely fulfill. But I think it just really says to me that they are looking for the FPS esport market, and specifically they're looking at I'll say it again, they're looking at the Counter-Strike market, because this is the kind of game that not really fixes, but really, I think addresses a lot of the issues they have a lot. They talk about Pika's advantage. I mean, that's a Counter-Strike thing first and foremost, right? They talk a lot about a lot of stuff that really plays to CS, and on top of the stuff you mentioned, Yiska, with the naming conventions of the factions of the game, but also you look at the art style. It's like League of Legends and Riot, they do the cartoony art style. They got to follow the Fortnite route here, because that's the way to go to lower your game rating, so like kids can play probably, or whatever. That's how you avoid a lot of the violence issues as well. So they're taking down a very specific and deliberate path that you can definitely see what they're trying to do here.
And I'd be very surprised if it wasn't free to play.
Yeah,
which is a big
I mean, that's a
over
Riot staple.
Overwatch.
I mean, granted, there's no S in Riot games as of today. Well, I suppose if you count TFT, but yeah, it's all been free. Like, you haven't had to pay anything. It might be, microtransactioned out the wazoo, but like, you can get in at the ground floor very, very easily and just get in and try the game, which I think is, definitely a positive for the most part.
It's pretty crazy that Riot went 9 years without a second game, and then within this last 10th year have announced 3 additional IPs in TFT, Project A, and then their new card game.
And the fighting game.
Runeterra.
Legends of Runeterra, which is the card game, and then they have the fighting game.
They have the fighting game too, yeah. So
they also have
isometric.
Yeah, that looks like a Diablo-esque kind of game as well. So
some sort of RPG.
It's crazy, yeah.
They didn't even really talk about it. They just kind of showed it, and I was like, "What is it?"
Yeah, so they're up to 6 now. They go from 1 to 6.
Also, there was a Twitter post that just came out, I think, from an anniversary event. I want to say it was in London. Don't quote me on that. Where they said that they're not making an MMORPG.
Are they just going to cover every single Blizzard place?
They're just making everything.
Why
apparently.
Not? And they don't even have to. I don't know. Like, they didn't even have to announce everything. They could just they could literally make every single game, and then decide, like, oh, actually, this isn't going to work, and just cut it. I don't know. I think they're in a space where there's enough trust and there's enough backing behind them. Also, they're probably one of the few developers that can just make any game free to play and be pretty confident that it'll draw people in and have a lot of investor faith in that, because they've made one of the most successful free to play games, if not the most successful free to play game ever. So it's like, if you don't trust that company to handle free to play, you don't trust any company. So
I would venture to guess that Blizzard's most profitable segment for new games are players of their existing games.
Yeah.
Crossover. And I would say that's short term and long term. I think that the people who are mostly playing Overwatch now aren't only playing Overwatch. At least the people who are spending the most money, they're also playing at least one other Blizzard IP.
Definitely.
So, just like we discussed before, people don't want to just play the game. They want to live around the game. They want shirts and hats, and they want to watch shorts, and they want to know more about the lore, and they want to go to their AOL RP chat rooms as Aragorn Orcslayer and be Aragorn and slay orcs. It's very much the same, that people want to be around that all the time. It also creates the kind of Blizzard loyalty that we won't talk about if they aren't cashing in on right now, but it definitely has been better. And, like, it's just surprising to me that they're trying to grow that so fast and so quickly. Just go from like this teeny umbrella to boom, here we go, 6 IPs, let's go. And it's just
a show.
It's a big risk. Yeah. I'm not saying that they don't have the resources to do it, but I also, if you give me a card game and a shooter and a Diablo dungeon runner thing, and you give me those and they aren't spread out at least 4, 5, 6 months from each other, I'm not going to be able to try and play them all.
Yeah. I think that's going to be a serious hurdle, is like, okay, how do we pace this out? They've tempered expectations. They've laid their cards on the table, and apparently not even all of them. And said, this is what we're working on. We're going to go dark now. You're not going to hear from us for a long time, but just know we exist. We're working. This is what we're doing. Talk to you later, which is very cool.
And to just like casually slip that one in there at BlizzCon season. It's like, BlizzCon's around the corner, but let's be right and just slide that one straight in there right before BlizzCon.
I wouldn't doubt it. I would not be surprised.
They know about what's coming at BlizzCon. And they're like, you know what?
Did you hear in the announcement? They even made a Diablo Immortal reference.
Oh, yeah, they're like, so
apparently you guys do like phones.
Yeah.
They actually even straight up made a reference. It's like, this is some targeted marketing they're doing right now.
Yeah, it definitely is.
It's true. A lot of Blizzard fans are looking for a new place to go with their time and money.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, we're here making a podcast. So
I say, bring it on. I say, competition is always a good thing.
Healthy,
good, right?
Definitely.
True.
This is a good thing. I don't want to like oversimplify competition is healthy, because I think people it's just like a regurgitated marketing term or whatever. Like marketing 101.
It's very cliche, but
there's
truth to it.
lot of depth to competition is good. because competition is muddled. It's not just the best game wins. Unfortunately, there's a lot of different facets to what makes somebody a effective competitor. And we're not going to go into that today because I know how much YouTube hates me going on my marketing rant. But what we are going to talk about is Gauntlet.
Oh,
let's go. So do I get I got to get something for the segue. There we go.
There you go.
Great segue, me. Gauntlet just happened this week.
It did.
And just randomly, we shot a message to Kevin. It's just like, hey, AVRL, you want to come on the show? And he said no. So then we offered him money. Said no. So we offered him Overwatch loot boxes. He said no.
Mm-hmm. And so you offered me Yiska's lamp, and I'm like, hell yeah.
I offered him Yiska's lamp. I was going to say Yiska's Rule 34 folder, and you said yes. But
get bullied.
The lamp's also in there.
Well done.
It is a little phallic when you think about it. Anyways, we're super pumped to have you on the show because, I mean, you spent the last, better parts of 2 weeks casting Gauntlet.
Close to.
And let's be honest, it wasn't just a Gauntlet for the teams. It was a Gauntlet for the casters as well. Yes, I've been working on that one for a while. Tell us about that experience for you before we go into the results and all the teams and stuff. I mean, Gauntlet's a big deal. A ton of Overwatch League. I would say this is probably one of the most crossover events that we've seen since World Cup of Overwatch League fans and Tier 2 Overwatch League fans all tuning in to watch the same thing in this Gauntlet.
I mean, everything about it was just on the mark right at me. The timing-wise, you have it just over Overwatch League, so just before World Cup and just after Overwatch League, so there's just this gap being filled where, okay, now your attention's on this now. The first, I would say, major international event for Tier 2, and, I'm not counting, I think Showdowns were definitely international events, but this is the whole world. This is everybody. This is not just a one conference kind of thing. It's also like the World Cup in a way where, okay, you have a lot of different representation across the world, but it's not like a national mixed team kind of thing anymore. This is established teams. This is more of a club format where these are teams that have been playing for seasons, if not years together, and stuff like that. So these are very familiar teams, and we finally get to see the true strength of various regions and all of that, and put to bed a lot of the rumors or the hot takes about who's better than who, and just let's let them duke it out and see what happens. And it was a 5-day tournament. I think that's nuts. It's the longest thing I've done so far. It is a lot of games to get through, a lot of matches, which is fantastic. I mean, this has got to be one of the best events so far for sure, if not the best one outside the Overwatch League. And yeah, it was just amazing from day 1 to day 5, and the whole thing was so incredibly well done. Can't nothing but praises from me.
I will say you are a big part of that. So let me give credit where credit is due. People love the casting, and you were a huge part of that. Obviously, people have heard you before on Overwatch League Daily and stuff, and had always complimented how great of a speaker you were and how you thought about the game. They really loved and enjoyed, and being able to see you bring that onto a more worldwide stage is amazing. So big congrats to that.
Thanks, man.
I don't know if you're pulling for the fences the past week, 2 weeks, but you hit a home run, an Aussie home run or New Zealander home run. I don't know. You put that one over the hobbit hole. I don't know what the term is.
I'll take all the above, man.
Great
all
job.
Are acceptable answers.
Let's talk a little bit about the results here, because it was, there was just so many good matches. So at the end of it all, you saw Element, Mystic, and Atlanta Academy, right? Going at it. Joe, Yiska, you guys are probably gonna know where we should probably start. I want to frame this a little bit backwards because I know a lot of people, including myself, didn't get to watch all the Gauntlet teams. They didn't get to watch everybody that they wanted or maybe should have watched. So let's make sure we frame it in that way. But, paint us a word picture, if you will, about what really happened at Gauntlet.
So, I don't think it really even, for me, it didn't really even start until like the actual like final playoff bracket. I felt like the groups were like pretty standard. I think Talon stood out as being impressive. Being a dark horse from a region that nobody really expected. You even kind of started to question how much, how strong their practice could have been. But then you kind of take into account some of the ongoing, talking points from other people in the community. They do scrim against, some of the top green teams, and, it makes a little bit more sense that way. But seeing them advance in this as the second seed in Group A is pretty exciting. Group B, again, kind of filtered out as expected. And for me, I think the actual story begins once we hit finals. Would you agree, Yiska?
Yes, even though I think the macro of it all was, to me, and okay, here's two different ways how we can frame the big revelation to me that I saw at Gauntlet.
Okay.
On one hand, I saw that NA teams can match up to Korean teams.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like the finals, okay, like we can talk about how close that was, but definitely Runaway getting blown out. There were some sweeps in there, but overall, like Korea was overall in aggregate the better region, but not, monumentally so.
It wasn't a top 4 Korea bracket or anything.
Yes. And in that way, you could frame that, right? Now, let me frame it from another point, which still blows my mind how Korea operates. Because Korea is still the best region in Contenders in the world, despite having fewer academy teams, having therefore fewer exposure, fewer two-way players, having not as much access, if any at all, scrimming Overwatch League teams.
Yeah.
Like the top NA teams had regular practice with the finalists of the Overwatch League. That has to count for something in terms of preparation. And despite all those seemingly advantages that NA Contenders had, Korea is still the best region in the world. Like, keep in mind, it's not even just like that you say, the immense talent and whatnot. NA Contenders is even booking these talents now away from Korean Contenders, but the system is still so strong that it still produces the best teams in Contenders or the best teams outside the Overwatch League in the world. And that, in that framing, is also incredible to me.
To even add on to that, like look at even just the compositions that Element Mystic are running. That's unheard of, at least in this metagame, right? You're running Sombra, you're running, a little bit more far than other teams, right? Like that's not something that we saw from the finalists of the Overwatch League. That's not something we saw from Atlanta Academy and XL2 and Team Envy. The powerhouse is coming in. Sorry, Legion, I expected you to do a little bit better. I figured that week of practice might have helped, but c'est la vie. That's different. That's completely different from what the best region and the best teams in the world are doing. I think that has to account for something. You list all these accolades, and they're even adapting. They're iterating onto the metagame. I think that's just insane.
And I think, to speak to that part especially, that may just be potentially an Element Mystic only kind of thing, because I think everyone was kind of caught off by that, including other Korean teams. Like, you look at Runaway, they're like, oh, this team, EM are running Sombra. We didn't know that was going to happen. Or I don't know. That's what it looked like. And yeah, I think it's crazy as well, because I went and talked to the teams. Most of the NA teams, except for like Legion, who left for Korea pretty quickly, most of the other NA teams were like, yeah, we scrimmed both Shock and Titans for like a while before we got here. Like, because if you think about it, who are people scrimming? If you're Overwatch League, most the teams that are out of the competition are not there anymore. So if you want to scrim, you're probably going up against Contenders teams at this rate, because you don't want to scrim your competition in the league. So it makes a lot of sense. And there's teams like, for example, Envy actually had really good practice coming in, which is why their result has probably been more surprising, because they went from scrimming against both the finalists of Overwatch League to getting into Korea a week early and scrimming against Korea, and they just had this like almost flawless bit of practice all the way through, where they never had this just like dead space in the middle where they got nothing. And then Atlanta obviously have a lot of Overwatch League scrim experience, and if the rumors are to believe that the results are there as well, then this is like by and far like an Overwatch League caliber team in this academy team. And then you look at Korea again, you're like, okay, well, ATL beat 2 of the Korean teams. That is pretty amazing on its own. The fact that they sweep them, there's a 3-0 versus Genji, a 4-0 versus Runaway, and then you just have this Element Mystic team that was just so damn good beyond everybody else, which speaks to both sides of what you were referring to, Yiska.
Yeah. Like that also, just like in terms of, I guess that's one thing that a lot of people just want to talk about, just like seeing the individual talent. Okay. And then we also have to tie in, like we now said, okay, Korean system, North American system. There is a team that was but pretty successful outside those systems in Talon, right? And of course, they do scrim predominantly, from what I've heard, against Korean contenders, so that sort of gives you some advantages. But keep in mind, like when I talk to coaches, right, and I've especially like even going back way to the Apex states and whatnot, you are, if you're a non-Korean team, you are playing against the Korean mafia, they call it, right? In terms of these teams are pretty tight knit. They rather improve as a scene, and the speed at which strategies disseminate is much quicker. They will just like more frequently play each other in that sense, and you're probably missing out on all that communication, like outer team communication within Korea, if you're Talon. So that is also very impressive that they were able to go pretty close with some of the Korean teams. But in general, I think that was more like a testament to the great individual talent they had on the roster. And I also think a lot of the results hinged on that in this tournament. Like Sparkle, of course, outstanding player. Like
Can I get on my Muse soapbox yet? Muse, anybody?
Yes.
Telling you, kid's talented. I did a little bit of VOD review trying to learn about Talon going into Showdown, and kids got quite a few heroes that are surprising, to say the least. I mean, it's a young talent. I think people need to be paying attention. I mean, there are a lot of easy, like very flashy shouts, but if you want a main tank prospect that isn't mag, that's young, that could be, your academy leader, Muse is looking pretty good.
These guys, I mean, I keep an eye out, but I think these guys, the talent roster's moving places. I know some of them already have some, pretty big trials or even offers coming their way. But we've even seen, here's a really funny thing about the Pacific is like this is the part where people underestimate Pacific the most. But if you look at some of the Korean talent, because there was a stage in Contenders Pacific where it was like predominantly Korean. It was half the entire region, if not more, was actually Korean players, and a decent number of those Korean players actually ended up in Contenders Korea. Some of them on top teams, and I mentioned this briefly on the Contenders broadcast, on the Gauntlet broadcast. But you look at Runaway, there are Pacific players on that team. EJ Gon is a Pacific player, and he's like one of the best Lucios ever.
Yeah.
And you look at Element Mystic, one of their coaches is from the Pacific. One of their players is an ex-Talon member. It's pretty huge. And And just across the board, I wouldn't be surprised. Like, let's say Muse doesn't make it to Overwatch League yet. He probably gets a main tank position on a big Korean team in Contenders. I mean, that's still pretty damn good.
Oh, definitely. 100%. Yeah. It's going to really kind of test him. And you know, you did well in, you know, Gauntlet with this team. What happens if you get put on a full Korean roster, like in, you know, one of the harder regions in Contenders? Like that's really a litmus test. Because
let's be honest, I think most of Runaway and Element Mystic and probably a bit of Gen G is going to get picked up, or they're going to be moving places, you know. So there's going to be a few openings. There's going to be more than a few openings.
Like Bliss, like the story that I've heard about Gen G, like finding him in like some sort of like backwater, like third-party tournament that they run. He's like 12 years old. This kid's just young as shit. Like, he just comes out and just has that kind of performance.
Now. I love it.
Like, that's insane, dude. Bliss is nuts. Like, there's a lot of gems that I don't think people are like really looking at. Like, of course, like you've Doha, super surprising. Like Patafan, you know, Sparkle. There's a lot of names out there, but there are a lot of like young talents that are you really need to keep your eyes on. So it's pretty exciting.
There is one team that has just kind of stuck out to me as like being really interesting, and that's Atlanta Academy.
Yeah.
It's the only expansion team that I can really look at really quickly that seems to be doing well in Contenders. That was an expansion team in season 2. So you know, obviously you have Envy, you have Gladiators Legion, XL2. But Atlanta Academy, at the helm of that entire franchise is Brad Rajani, Sephi, who, you know, you could argue was one of
at Gauntlet as well.
Yeah.
He was between I don't know if this might be too bold.
No. Okay.
Brad has built some really impressive rosters in pretty saturated markets and done fairly well. I would say Atlanta Reign were one of those teams that they didn't finish at the very top by any means. They got some big wins off, though, some really big teams, and picked up players who did really well. Now their academy team is one of, if not the best in North America at this point.
Sure.
If not, you know, second, third in the world, based off of Gauntlet results. Are the whole Atlanta team here, are they standouts right now overall as an organization if you look top down?
So I'll answer first by saying, like, again, this is coming from talking to teams, that, you know, one of the questions, especially if you're an academy team, is like, so what do you guys, you know, what's your link to your main Overwatch League roster? Do you guys do anything? Do you share stuff? Do you, like, you know, do you talk? And some of the teams are like, no communication. There's nothing like, you know, it's like they're a totally separate team. That's on the bottom end. And the top end, you have Atlanta Academy, where it's just like, yeah, like, honestly, we're just one big team, because they're in North America regularly scrimming against their Overwatch League roster. And I'm not saying academy teams need to be doing that, but they were. And then on top of that, you know, well, yeah, clearly, and apparently, you know, more rumors, but it's like Atlanta Academy for a certain period of time in North America was actually, you know, beating Atlanta Reign in scrims pretty regularly, you know, for a period of time. Again, rumors, but Atlanta Academy at this stage is such a tight-knit sort of team with their main Overwatch League roster. You know, the way they talk about the different players, you know, the amount of two-ways they have, the two-way players they have on there, and plus Kodak, who was also on the league roster as well, and just how both of those teams between Atlanta Academy and the Overwatch League team sort of exist and coexist together is probably the best among all academy teams that I've either seen or heard of, or, you know, have any inkling of. So to me, it doesn't surprise me at all that their academy team is doing so well. And you look at Brad, the guy at Gauntlet, like you said, Volamel, he's like coming in the booth after every single map and talking to his team and stuff like that. He's super involved. And I'm not saying every single Overwatch League GM or like manager or whatever, or owner comes in and does stuff with their academy team in Gauntlet in Korea and comes in their booth. But, like, I don't know, it just shows you a little bit of that extra. It shows you a little bit more about Brad. It's like, everything adds up. It all makes sense.
you can have teams that say, oh, we're a family, we're a brotherhood, like we really have a community here. I don't think Atlanta needs to say that. They can just show it by how many people showed up to the academy team's performance and is trying to help them grow, help them follow on to their path to pro, or help them just promote within and internally in Atlanta. I think it was a show not only of solidarity, but a good performance boost to have extra hands on deck to get these guys. I mean, again, it was more of a joke, but you had Dogman coming out and trying to threaten Kodak's spot.
Fried was there too, man. There was more Atlanta people. There was like the amount of Atlanta that showed up there was actually insane.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Very, very cool to see.
And I feel like Yiska, I mean, Atlanta Reign and just Atlanta as an organization, top down, seem to kind of check your boxes on kind of also going that hybrid route a little bit.
Sure.
So, I mean, is this a special squad here? I mean, is this something, that we're not seeing from other Overwatch League teams and squads?
I think the closest one, even though this year's performances in Overwatch League don't really match that up, and honestly neither Contenders as much, is Fusion, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Like I think Fusion in Overwatch League Season 1 and then their Contenders team was pretty comparable in terms of like the performance that they had. Also, I would say the ability of Atlanta, I'm not throwing anyone under the bus here by saying this, but teams have internal struggles. Sure. And I'm very impressed how Atlanta Reign seemingly still makes it work across the organization and just brings people together and still performs at a level where they got into playoffs. They could upset the eventual champions, and also just like in the Gauntlet, make it to the finals again. So I think generally after Season 1, like just looking at the track record from the outside, and of course, like it's very possible that Brad comes with an entourage of coaches that just make this possible. But like you have the responsibility as a GM, as the outwards leader of that, and assembling that team that gets you these results certainly also is something that needs to be valued. And just looking at his track record from discovering players like Sinatra, arguably Dufresne, if his situation panned out, I think he would have remained one of the top players in Overwatch League. Then going into San Francisco Shock, trusting Super, giving him that contract. Of course, someone else then takes them and makes them Overwatch League champions, of course. But then also doing it again in 2 other teams, in their main team and in their off team. Sure, maybe I don't have any inside knowledge of that, if he had any say on the academy roster assemblage, but he at some point in the chain made the call to hire someone that then made this possible. And to have this meta skill is super important. Like that's one of my favorite things about the changes in Contenders as well, is in Overwatch we have gatekeepers. That's not necessarily a negative thing, right? Gatekeepers are just like the GMs or the coaches that say, yes, you may now compete in Overwatch and increasingly so in Contenders as well in academy teams. Now, these gatekeepers have an amazing amount of responsibility for future careers of these players. And we, as much as we have to criticize people that don't make it there and who themselves need to lose their position or improve drastically, we also have to say those are the positive, seemingly from the outside, positive examples where someone is in a position of such a gatekeeper and does an outwardly amazing job.
Yep. So far so good. He's hired very good people to sign or to figure out what to do with an academy team. I think it should instill a lot of faith in not only Atlanta fans, but sets a precedent for the Overwatch League going forward. That like, hey, if it is true that he has set a a guideline forward into who and what and how you're going to hire. Yep. Maybe you should, try to reverse engineer it or figure out what he saw that maybe you could take. That it proves that you can do it. It is worth it. I can't imagine that Atlanta Academy, players aren't getting scouted and looked at and have contracts being thrown at them, because of how consistent and how high they've been able to perform. Like this is a pretty tested team. Could just take the team and put them elsewhere. Granted, I guess you can't do that because some of the ages on some of the players, but there's talent here that needs to be seriously looked at.
So, sorry, go ahead.
I mean, if you look at, I think pretty much all top 3, top 4 teams are going to have their players moved up or moved on somewhere. And I think, look, if Atlanta Academy wasn't going to be the team to reach the finals, I don't know if any other NA team would have had that sort of fuel to sort of get them there, because you look at Envy as the next highest seeded team who lost to XL2, and that's again a big surprise. But seeing the way XL2 got swept by Atlanta, it's a very similar way to Gen G losing and stuff like that. I don't know if it wasn't Atlanta in this tournament, you're just not too sure any other NA team would have been able to make it that far, right? It's pure speculation on my part. But this could have easily been a career versus career final, a career top 3. It nearly was a career top 3 if it wasn't for the fact that ATL got there in second place and sort of just like, combo broke that entire thing. But yeah, like...
And they swept their way there.
Exactly. There was one team that could do it and it had to be this team. And if Atlanta Academy didn't exist or didn't exist in this fashion, or a different NA team was here, I don't see that happening personally.
So Atlanta Academy defeats XL2 3-0. Then they go play Gen G, defeat them 3-0. Then they play Runaway, defeat them 4-0. And I feel like we need to stop there. Nuts. Because this feels like a very key turning point. It was already surprising enough, I feel like, for a lot of people. Like Runaway, obviously that name has a ton of weight in the tier 2 Overwatch scene, especially with the Titans being largely former Runaway. And now, they're still looking great with the roster that they have now. Atlanta Academy sweeps Runaway in the losers final before going to the grand final, 4-0. AVRL, how big of a deal was this series? How insane was it?
I mean, let's be accurate about something. It actually wasn't close. Of the 4 maps, Runaway got 2 points.
Yeah.
On Horizon, that's it.
It was.
That wasn't one of those close 4-0s where
no. This was convincing.
0 points on Lee Jung, 0 points on Hollywood, 0 points on Route 66, 2 points on Horizon is all Runaway got. That's it. Atlanta got everything else. Atlanta completely dominated them everywhere else. And I talked about Atlanta having like a bit of a close-knit sort of relationship with their league team, but I'd say Runaway, despite not being an official Academy roster, might as well be the Titans Academy roster. And the way they operate with the Titans team, I mean, it's definitely closer than what a lot of actual Academy teams do with their parent team. So Runaway very actively talk to, scrim against, and just have relationships with the Titans roster. I mean, to me, it feels like Runaway and Titans are very closely connected, as they should be. And I see that as one of the strengths of Runaway, and this is probably one of the favorites of the tournament, not getting the desired result. And yeah, they beat Gen G, but they were supposed to beat Gen G, so not super surprising. They lost to Element Mystic, which is a little bit more surprising, but at the same time, I think I definitely had faith in EM. I think EM were always going to be a super strong team, especially in this beta, and it really showed how creative and what sort of depth they really had. But I definitely expected a map from Runaway against Atlanta. I did not foresee that being a 4-0. Yeah. I felt like Atlanta had a good shot at beating them. I would have still favored Runaway overall. But hey, if Runaway was going to go down, that should have been a 2-4, just like EM versus Runaway. Yeah. I did not see it being not only a 4-0, but a 4-0 stomp nonetheless.
I think if you play that like 100 times, I think it does come out to be probably a little bit closer. I don't know if Runaway were a little rattled after the EM game. I don't know if they were super, prepared going into this. There were a few Korean teams. I mean, look at, you talk about decisive. Look at ATL Gen G. Like that was a quick 3-0 and a handshake. That was decisive.
Yeah,
like the rotations and the Bastion mirror were disgusting. And Gen G had no idea what to do. And Atlanta's still trying to pull out some sort of weird Hammond thing that had mixed success, but they still had tricks in the bag to pull out. And they I mean, if anything, it was almost analogous to what the Shock did in the OWL finals, right? Like they take a very close loss in the upper bracket, go through the lower bracket, sweep everybody, just completely just beast moding it, anime storylines out the wazoo. And then they just kind of fell short against, this Element Mystic team that just was on the game, had cards that nobody even knew they could pull and looked comfortable doing it. Like it's impressive to say the least that Atlanta comes out and does this.
And by the way, this meta that we saw for Gauntlet requires so much teamwork, especially around Bastion comps. Like that is, to me, one of the highest teamwork skill ceiling comps that we've seen. Some people might look at them and be like, boring, it's Bastion, but when you really look at the nuts and bolts of it, it's almost like Goats again, where every piece of that puzzle has to be so well synced with every other piece that if you mess something up, your entire composition falls apart. And this is the kind of composition that falls apart super quickly if you lose a player at the wrong time or at any time, or if something goes wrong, you don't manage your cooldowns well enough. It's like, oh, you blew your lamp. Okay, cool, you lose. It's just a whole bunch of small things going on that you have to have so perfectly in your ability rotation, just like Goats. That when you see Atlanta roll through with their Bastion comps and just walk over all these teams, you're like, man, their teamwork is tight.
Yeah.
And their macro planning is tight as well. I mean, again, I loved that game, Atlanta Gen G. Like that was like textbook, like almost chain wrestling, where it's like, okay, we're going to move here. The only options where you can move are here and here, and you chose the wrong one. So we're going to do X, Y, and Z. Like it was clockwork what they were doing. It was disgusting how quickly they dismantled that team, who, I mean, to be fair, like one of the weaker Korean teams, but still like a contender, and it was not close.
Gen G was the team that everyone said was the best scrim team overall.
Oh, really?
When I asked the teams, everyone almost unanimously, this is the funny part, the Korean teams did not agree with this, but all the non-Korean teams were like, yeah, Gen G is the best Korean team right now. They showed the best scrim results, they all of this, all of that. And at this point, you go to the Scrimbuck stock exchange, like, do I buy it or not? It's a really tough place to be, right? Because I'm like, damn. Because I had EM picked pre-tournament. Okay. I said Talon top 6, EM win the tournament, and then I get to the team interviews. I'm like, oh my god, have I picked wrong? Like, god damn, Gen G is the best team. And for a while, they did look like it, but because EM were, I wouldn't say struggling, but they weren't.
They started shaky.
They did not look clean, and later on you find I was like, oh, okay, well they had way more strats. They just didn't show. That's some 900 IQ stuff because they just held back their Sombra strats. They went to 5 maps against Talon and held back their Sombra strats. Like, how close do you want to cut this? Ian? It was pretty tight. You know what I'm saying? It turns out they had the greatest depth among all the teams, but I was scared because everyone said Gen G was going to be the best. A lot of people say that Gladiators scrim really well as well, but then don't show up on officials. And the same just might slightly be true for Gen G, where they cash in the scrim bucks and they don't win the games they're supposed to on the day.
So
interesting.
I'm re-looking at this now, and I don't have the exact numbers, but I will say this: for Element Mystic to have won, if you add up map wins and map losses, they had to have done the worst of any team in the top 6. Like
they definitely played more.
Like they had so they're the only team that I can really see that didn't sweep or get swept.
Yep.
And that was, I mean, that's
Makes sense,
it's
right?
consistent. It's consistent. It's beating your opponent. It's not just, there's a lot to attribute there, but it's really interesting that you have a team like that walking away with it all. And then, they did beat Atlanta Academy twice as well, which is also notable.
Can I beg the question here?
No.
Because, okay, one thing that's different, they aren't going to be expansion teams next season, of course.
Sure.
But last this season, we proved that bringing an entire Korean Contenders roster into Overwatch League with minimal adjustments can get you the finals and can give you the most dominant season. Not the most dominant season the Overwatch has seen.
You don't think NYXL did that in season 1?
I think Vancouver was very close in terms of percentage of win rates over the season.
Sure,
but every player bar Takoyaki turns 18 during the next season or before. So even their coach wants to go all out now. Is this a thing where one team just says, okay, either we make a lot of room or we eject our entire roster and we just go the runaway route? Because like some of it, of course, it is not the tenured roster of several years of playing together, but some of these players have been playing for a long time together.
Definitely.
Can I say this Element Mystic org has exported so many Overwatch League players, it's not even funny. You look at their history, you look at who's been through this team, it's like, wow, that's Overwatch League, that's Overwatch League, that's Overwatch League. It's just so much talent has come through this one team. It's nuts. And yeah, like if I want to be greedy, and I do want to say, look, if they can all go together one team, that would be absolutely crazy. I don't know what team that could be, though. I don't know what team has enough free spots in it to just pick up this wholesale. I think in a perfect world, I think Seoul should just take the whole team. Yeah. Seoul should just dump their current roster, take this whole team. They even get to keep the same color scheme, EM that is, fantastic for them. And I think the Korean fan base would be proud of this team. No, I'm serious.
Yeah, I think there are some gems on Gen G that you might want to keep around. Glister, Bliss. I mean,
Sparkle and Glister on the team.
Like how dominant in the 2-2 meta. You're talking about like ace, flex DPS that can play a number of different things at a world class level. Like Glister, Sparkle. Like that's a showstopper. That's insane.
I need to double check something.
Stalling. Okay, so to your point, Yiska, do you really think that Element Mystic could go in, like, you take this roster, you put it in Overwatch, like, do you think they could be, like, finalists? Because I don't see that. I think they could be, like, very much above average, but I don't see them going, like, full.
Do you need a finalist off the bat? Do you need, like,
no, definitely not.
Finalists, so we don't pick them up. Because I think even if they make, like, a decent result in playoffs, I think that's
fantastic for like a bottom tier. Like if Florida just goes, okay, we're just going to sign Element Mystic. Like that's a franchise improvement. Like 2 seasons too late, but it's a fantastic improvement. Yeah, exactly.
I don't think you got to make the finals. I don't think you got to make the finals.
Not at all. I think it depends on what your franchise is aiming to do. Are you trying to rebuild faith in the system? Are you rebuilding a system to, figure out where you want to stand? Are you, flipping, the table on exactly what you were doing before and you're going to try something else, maybe go full Korean? Like this would be a good team to start off with. And yeah, I agree. You don't need to go to the finals, but that has to be something that they're okay with.
You aim for it. It's a goal, but like
100%. 100%.
The thing is, I can almost promise you the number you would be hearing from Element Mystic for buying that entire team would make you go, but you definitely have a chance to win the final, right? Like that is going to be a number, dude. Like
sure,
individual moves last season were already pretty economically
aggressive,
well adjusted, and. Yeah, I think that roster would be absolutely ridiculous.
Gotta get some Cloud9 money, Team Liquid, where you at? Start to pop off some investments.
So, like, you're representing Korean esports. Can you really lose in your own arena?
It's true.
So there's 2 teams. If I just go through and look at like the free agency status and just look at like how many teams have enough room to just sign the chunk of Element Mystic, and there's 2, the LA Gladiators and the Toronto Defiant.
Sure.
Those are the 2. Seoul has 5 players under contract, so it would be tight. Maybe a tight fit.
Okay, so what you do is, because here's the thing, Seoul went for like a 12-man roster anyway, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I
Not saying they
kind of think
can't
that's
do it. Not saying they can't do it.
I think any team that wants to go for a 12-team option could actually potentially look at this, because having that option is actually kind of smart, because you have a potential sub for everybody. You also can do a lot of internal scrims. And especially if you're traveling a lot, you can sort of, I don't know, reduce burnout by adjusting a roster based on, okay, this is a lot too much travel for one guy here or whatever. And you can sort of make it so everyone does less traveling if you have more players that can do traveling. So I can see a world where teams that want to go for a full 12-man roster option can actually pick up a whole team full sale. And yeah, maybe Toronto and LA Gladiators could be teams like that. But also, I think for most Korean teams, the opportunity to represent the only Korean franchise is like it's a good deal.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I think we spent enough time on the Gauntlet. This is a good chat. I learned a lot, so thank you, appreciate it.
Put that in my back pocket.
Okay. I know, right? Yeah. So there were two things that we wanted to discuss really quick on league movements. They're pretty light and easy, so we're gonna go through them quickly. I don't want to spend a ton of time on them. But the first one is D-Pay has been announced as both the head coach and GM for LA Gladiators. Yiska, we were kind of discussing this a little bit, and something that you had said is that teams utilize the head coach role and the GM role in a lot of different overlapping ways. Some are strictly player management, some are elsewhere. You have Boston Uprising, where obviously Huck is very considered hands-on in the scouting and doing that stuff. You have other franchises that maybe they're more hands-off and are more in tune with making the franchise profitable, and that's kind of what their focuses are on. And so you've mentioned there's a breadth there. D-Pay coming in, being announced as both. What's your take on this? Does this make sense? Is this a big deal? This is after Annalyn has transitioned away to GM, so their marketing social media lead, Annalyn, transitioning to a GM position for Washington Justice. It's an interesting move, to say the least.
Yes. Now, without knowing how much of KC was previously involved, it stands to reason that they know what they have in him and sort of can evaluate what he brings to the table. There's certainly also the possibility that he wanted to be, wanted to move up, or wanted to, have it both ways, wanted to be in a more hard position. We don't know, right? Maybe we will find out soon, but in general, I think it's not a move that necessarily screams to me that this is not doable, right? It's just like these tight. They are. Did you understand what you would say, that it's too much?
I think those are two very heavy hats. I think those are two positions that need, I would imagine, again, I'm projecting a lot of guesstimations on what it means to be a GM and what it means to be a head coach. I think those are very, very heavy hats that need individuals to run efficiently. And I don't doubt that D-Pay is probably not good as a GM and good as a head coach, but as both simultaneously, that's worrisome to me.
He does have a team of one assistant or two assistant coaches and one assistant manager.
I mean, that's pretty standard, but
compared to other teams, like that's just as much coaching squads, if not more.
Well, I'll tell you what, he could be a very macro, like top heavy guy where, because he sort of has both positions, he can just be the overarching leader and says, okay, this is the direction of the team, and it's going to be synchronized from a management and also coaching perspective. You're not going to have a Huck Krusty situation again, because this is going to be one guy kind of overarching both. And he doesn't need to be super involved in both sides. You can have a lot of assistants and management and coaching take the main brunt of the work, and as long as you are aligning the total direction of the team from managerial and coaching perspective, that can actually be a good thing. But look, I agree, Volamel, that like if there's too much for him to do and he has to be too involved in both roles, that can kind of crumble. But if he kind of keeps it where like he's just very much a top-down kind of thing, where he's looking at more of a macro kind of picture, and he just lets his assistants do the jobs that they need to do, then I can actually see it working quite well from a direction standpoint.
100%. I'm not saying it can't work.
Yeah.
I'm just worried when you give one person a ton of things to do. You're going into 2020.
And it could also crumble, because if D-Pay, makes a bad decision and he's making the calls for the direction, right? If he makes a bad call, then suddenly one guy is in charge of making all your bad calls, and the team can crash and burn super quick. But we'll assume that he does know what he's doing as someone that's been with the Gladiators for some time.
100%. I mean, he's definitely worked with some of the team members before. I believe last looking at the contract status for some of the players. They're still on team option, so that definitely lends me to believe that he might be able to, pull them back towards the team. They don't have to leave anywhere, but it's a lot, especially going into the first year of travel, the first season of getting people visas, getting an arena set up, getting ticket sales. Like, that's a lot of stuff for one person to do.
You would never do that. I can almost promise you that you're being trapped by a linguistic framework that he would never be. Like, we already know that general manager is not general manager in the Overwatch League. For some, like what Tasmo did is very different than.
It depends, right?
What Annalyn would be doing.
The GM for the Atlanta Reign is Paul Hamilton. You're telling me that he's filling the role that it's Brad, right? It's Brad who's filling.
Brad's listed as coach, I think.
He's listed as head coach, but he's fulfilling those roles very much of like traditionally a GM role.
Yeah.
I suppose,
in my opinion.
I think there's just delegation that's going to happen. I cannot imagine that he does literally everything.
No, of course not.
Including business development and like merch and whatnot. Like that some other GMs in terms of also marketing and whatnot, like that all these calls are being made by him. I think there's going to be a solid amount of just like if he wants to stay focused on Overwatch, which head coach definitely implies, right? It's like that the head coach thing definitely tells me more than when the tag general manager is tagged on, because that just means you're in some meetings that other people aren't. It does basically mean nothing about what you're actually doing in your job in the Overwatch League.
Sounds to me like he's got a vision for the overall franchise, but doesn't want to lose the activity on the day-to-day player.
Sure.
Stuff. That's what it sounds like to me, for someone to go, I'm a head coach and I have my head coach position, and you're like, you know what? I want to do GM, but I don't want to lose this route, this place where I have expertise that not a whole lot of GMs have.
And by the way, head coach could just be, I manage all the assistant coaches and I make sure the direction of the coaching is going in the same direction as in this case, maybe matching that up with the managerial stuff. But like he doesn't even need to be the guy in every single scrim doing all the reviews. He doesn't need to be the guy doing all the coaching stuff. He can have a full team of assistants doing that, and he can just make sure everyone's on the same page. That could be the job of head coach in his position.
And I mean, it speaks to your structure argument of, completely top down. I'm just going to be, a general manager, basically. I'm just going to oversee the coaches and the coaching staff and make sure everything's going as well as it can be, and setting them up for success and leading that. And maybe creating another position to lead the business side of things, and creating another position to lead logistics, right? Like that definitely can happen, but it's from the outset, for me, it's a lot of responsibility put on one person alone. Again, the off season is young. There could be more signings. I'm sure there will be, as Gladiators restructures and reshuffles around ownership and whatnot. So I'm going to assume that they're going to have to sign a lot more people, but just at the offset, it seems like a lot of responsibility for one person.
I agree. I don't wonder. I think that there are some levels of like, I don't think that this is this scenario, but trophy titles. I'm not saying D-Pay is being trophy titled anything, but I am saying that there are definitely people who have a specific role who aren't actually doing what that role traditionally does.
Definitely.
And like there's always flex and wiggle room, which is why it's hard. We talk about the show a lot, and when we talk about specific teams, especially when we do like preseason primers, we don't just say so-and-so's the general manager, so-and-so's the head coach, and here's their 2 assistant coaches, and it's done. We take some extra time to actually discuss how they interpret that role. And it's not just one standard interpretation that makes for successful Overwatch League teams. And we've seen that time and time again. So I don't know. I'm excited for the dude. We've had Deepay on the show a few times. I've talked with him a few times, and he's smart, clearly driven, clearly has done really strongly as far as just overall results go. I mean, Gladiators are, have always done well in competitive Overwatch, and he should be attributed to a large part of that success, and that's
100%.
That's great. So we'll see if this helps broaden the vision and bring the team even more cohesiveness and to come and have an even stronger season, or we'll see if maybe this experiment doesn't work out. I'll tell you this: I'm going to try really hard to get Deepay on the show before season 3 starts.
I would love some clarification on exactly what these mean and how what the vision might be, because if he has a good projection and idea and plan, then I'm all on board. Like,
I would hope that they wouldn't give
question.
him the job if he didn't, though. To be fair, like, I'm hoping that in the interview the first thing goes, "What's your plan?" He'd be like, "Hey, I did head coach. I'll take care of it, okay?"
Right. Don't worry about it.
To put this joke to rest, he shoulder bumps them out the door and calls it.
There it is. Hey,
there
we go. Off the top rope.
Yeah. So stop saying that joke. It's not funny. Other one though. Changes.
It's the
That's
season of
to
change.
the Toronto head coach position, huh, Joe?
Yeah. Feifei from Paris Eternal and Eagle Gaming fame. I know everybody loves their Eagle Gaming memes, going back to the old GOATS meta, but Coach Feifei will be the head coach of Toronto Defiant. So far, like I don't have any reason to think that Feifei's bad. He seems to have a pretty positive track record, at least historically, in Overwatch. Found out through a little bit of research that he has like traditional sports background as well, so that definitely
Yiska loves
adds a
that,
little
by
bit of
the way.
spice.
Yiska finds traditional sports and esports to be one and the same.
Definitely not one and the same, but it has experience. Like, you have experience managing the some form of youth and dealing with personalities, which lends me to believe that he's pretty well equipped. What does this mean for Toronto? Your guess is as good as mine. I have no idea. Maybe they go full French Canadian. They do have a team in Montreal. Like, I don't know. I would assume French members meant some sort of a French following with Feifei in terms of players, but it's purely speculation on my behalf. But we'll see.
Just want
to see what Toronto does. Possibly. Never know. They could just move. Maybe the first team that moves. We've seen titles change. We've seen teams sell. I'm waiting for the first team.
Like, let me in.
Yeah, see, it'd be a move. I don't know if it'd be successful. It would definitely be a move to sign XQC again.
Bold takes from the young Volamel.
We'll have to see. We'll have to see what Feifei does.
Yeah.
I don't know. I can't say that I've spoken to too many people that have strong opinions on him either way. He seems to be kind of not under the radar. Not that he hasn't been viewed before, but I haven't heard too much good and or bad. So
I will say there does
does
seem to be this kind of consistent storyline with the Toronto Defiant and trying to find that right leadership position.
Sure. Definitely.
They had Bishop there first. He's no longer there.
Left before the season ended.
Yeah, they promoted. Who did they promote? Was it Moby Dick that they promoted?
I think they just did a collective Like, okay, we're just gonna all coach. Like, I
or
don't.
was it Optidox? I can't remember. They promoted. There was someone who said like so and so is going to be taking over in the meantime. I think it was Optidox.
Maybe, man.
And they're no longer with the team now. But you still, so there's still clearly like this need of like, who's gonna step up, actually be a leader for the coaching staff on this team and get the team on the right track where expectations were high. I think for Toronto, I think a lot of people had really high expectations. I don't think that Toronto hit the mark on their first season, but at the same time, I think that a lot of people haven't written Toronto off yet. You know, like Paris after their first bad season, they're like, okay, whatever and stuff. It was like for Toronto, it was like, come on, a little bit more. You seem like you're close. Seem like you're finding it. It's like a game of pin the tail on the donkey, and they just keep hitting those hips. Is that an okay analogy? I don't know.
I could imagine. So
I've
I
had
think that's
worse,
pretty safe.
right?
Yeah.
Could have been a lot
That is
worse.
adequate.
All right.
We'll have to see.
On that analogy, nope, wrong button. Wrong. That was actually the wrong button. I wasn't actually booing myself. Though it makes sense, doesn't it? We got to get out of here. It's been a long show. Thank you.
But for good reasons.
Thank you, AVRL, for being here with us.
It's been a lot to talk about.
I know. We kind of went all over. We're like, yeah, we're just going to talk Gauntlet and, Contenders 2020. And then, we talked home design, interior design. We discussed religion quite extensively.
We touched every base.
We did a lot of this show. It was a good show. Definitely not one to miss. So if you're here live, tell your friends.
Implying Joe is awake enough. Is awake enough to even follow a religion. His God is asleep. Let's be honest. His God is asleep.
Wow.
A constant state of delirium.
So while we wrap the show up, AVRL, I'd love for you to take this opportunity to tell us where our viewers and listeners can find you, any shout outs for the week, anything that you want to throw out there, self-promote. I know you're talking about wanting to do more streaming. So now's a great time to shout that out.
First of all, you can catch me on my Twitter, which is actually on the stream here at I'm AVRL, I am AVRL, and then also my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/AVRL AVRL. So those are probably the two main places. And I might be doing a thing very soon with Team Australia, so keep a hold of their Twitter account as well for the World Cup stuff.
Ooh.
And yeah,
very cool.
Awesome. Yiska, what about you, man? Shout outs for the week. Where can people find you?
As in general on my Twitter, haven't been very active, but starting next week, I'm off a week from work, so I'll probably hop on the horse, do some thinking overs, maybe some more high effort video.
Horse, soft S or hard S?
Is that a difference?
Say it out loud, and you tell me.
Never mind. But yeah, in general, I think you can just follow Twitter. That's usually where it all goes, or in Discord, of course.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Will you play Fortnite with me?
No.
All right. Great.
I would play Apex, but I don't care for Fortnite.
Oh, man. I want to get back into it. Season 2 seems fun. All right, Joe, shout outs for the week. Where can people find you?
All the socials at Volamel, VOLAMEL. Still doing the right thing. Just released a couple speculative, roster moves that DPay kindly poked a whole bunch of holes into, signing as GM and coach for the Gladiators. I kind of had some of their players moving around, so don't know about that one anymore. But yeah, just going to be speculating and theory crafting about what's going on in the off season, and working on projects yet to be announced. So yeah, keep a lookout.
Sweet. As for me, you can find me everywhere at KickedTripod, Twitch, YouTube, and Twitter.com/KickedTripod. Find the show everywhere. Just search for Tactical Crouch, Twitter, tactical_crouch, patreon.com/tactical crouch. We are 100% supported by our fans. So subscribe on Twitch, subscribe on YouTube, go to Patreon. We're going to do some game nights, I promise. We're going to hammer that out today, actually, because I said so. We're going to do it now. But yeah, that's going to do it for us. No new 5-star iTunes reviews, but if you're like, hey, I'm not going to give you my money, you filthy... don't worry about it. Leave us a 5-star iTunes review, and we'll shout you out on the next show. Other than that, that's going to do it for episode 56. Thank you so much for hanging out. We'll be back for the post show in just a moment. Bye-bye. Bye.